I met Siza, clearly I met Siza because of José Paulo dos Santos. José Paulo dos Santos in the 80s, early 80s, was a student at the Royal College of Art, where I was a professor. I was a professor there in the painting school, but I was already working on my exhibition of Adolf Loos. And José Paulo heard me speaking about Adolf Loos and was interested in my research on Adolf Loos, and that's how I met him. And the result of having met him, the result was that I met this small group of people called 9H, who at the time did not have yet, first they had only a magazine, and then they had a gallery. And when they had a gallery, one of the first exhibition was an exhibition of Siza, which was the first exhibition of Siza in London. And in the run-up for this exhibition, I came, the first time I came to Oporto to see Siza's work. And I saw Siza's work. I saw the swimming pool. I saw the near the sea, which was a great piece. And it was just a time when the bank in Villa do Conde was just opened. And I was deeply impressed by this work. And I wrote a piece about this work, which was both published in our 9H catalog and published in Building Design, which was an important professional publication of the architectural world in London. And as a result of this exhibition of Siza in London, which was his first, I also suggested to him that while I'm taking my Loos exhibition to Tel Aviv Museum, that I will also show his work there, and to which he agreed, and that was his first exhibition and first contact in Tel Aviv Museum at the time. So that's how I met him, and that were the events that inaugurated my relationship, you could say, with Portugal, and especially with Siza, and subsequently also Eduardo and many other people like Cristina Guedes and so on. And of course, José Paulo dos Santos. That was now, if I am asked what are the qualities, I would say that for me, there are many qualities in the work of Siza which attracted me to his work. Above all, the fact that there is a very little dogmatism and a great deal of playfulness, and above all is understanding not only of qualities of space as such, but natural light and the use of light. And especially, I also found the great affinities between his work and the work of Adolf Loos, so much so that when I did my second exhibition on Adolf Loos, called Adolf Loos, Our Contemporary, I interviewed Siza for an hour, in which he spoke in a very interesting way on how Adolf Loos actually affected him. And anybody who look at the facade of the School of Architecture in Oporto can see that on the right, the first building is a direct homage to a very important building by Loos in Paris, the house that Loos designed for Tristan Tzara. And that facade is exactly echoes, like a homage, where Siza pays homage to Loos. And indeed, when I did the exhibition, Siza no longer had the model for this, but he got this model to be remade for me for the exhibition, which I showed in the exhibition of Adolf Loos, Our Contemporary, in which I interview several architects around the world, like Toyo Ito, like in São Paulo, Paulo Mendes da Rocha. Even he had quite a lot to say about laws, and in that context, Siza stood out. And again, I was here last January to speak with Siza on Aldo Rossi, who was terribly important for him in many ways. And that brings me to the final point in Siza's work, which is so important. Is one of the rare architects who managed to combine the aesthetic and the ethics to a very large extent. An issue that is little understood and actually, I think, extremely important. The most important legacy of Siza is not his relationship with the past, his contribution for the present and the future, in the sense that his way of conceiving of spaces, passages, public spaces, private, the mixture of them, the ability to bring in natural light into the interior. I mean, these are the qualities that will make him more memorable and important than any particular relationship with the past or present, you know. But of course, that's part of his achievement, is the ability to communicate in this way. There is no architect who is free from such communication, because architecture as a language naturally has profound connections and benefit from these age-old sediments of usages and meanings, etc., without which there is no language. And Siza is certainly a beneficiary of that heritage. I remember when he was speaking in a lecture at Columbia in New York, when he was speaking of Santiago Museum, he spoke about about the effect, the influence of the Latin American indigenous architecture on the Iberian architecture, which was incredible. Usually people talk the other way around. And I remember also that he talked profoundly on the fact of the Arab occupation of that land, especially in terms of the earth and the treatment of the earth and the water on the earth. Well, all these issues are incredibly important. And one of the things that I noticed very early on, and I wrote on Villa de Condor, but I noticed very much his ability to use the way the water level, or what we call the spirit level, the way in which he plays with the changes in levels on the ground is very profound, and it's really settled that aspect which is so important in architecture, which is the relationship to the ground, to the earth, and the ability to enter into a kind of dialogue with the earth, with the site, are very, very important. Something that you find in some other great architects. For example, in the work of the Smithson, there was similar understanding of the site, of the importance of the earth and the level at which the earth is reflected. I think that for me, modern is timeless, because modern itself speaks of the time. Modern simply means from Cassiodorus onwards, after the fall of the Roman Empire. This is where the use of the word modern began, and it means simply of the time, modern. So modern is of the time, and so in that sense there is no pre-modern. Pre-modern is anything that was as it were before, and postmodern is everything that's after. But you cannot really have anything postmodern, because modern is of the time, so it's meaningless. It's contradiction in terms to speak about postmodern anyhow. But in spite of that, it's certainly a very meaningful and very important and useful term in literature, much more than in architecture. And I think that in that sense, there is nothing particularly postmodern in Siza's work. Aldo Rossi famously said that he wasn't modern enough to be postmodern. And I think that could also be applied to Siza. And I think that Siza is, if you want to apply any terms, I would call him a modern par excellence, you know. Modern is something that renews itself, it's not fixed. They were modern on the 12th century, you know. Modern is like an amplitude, it comes and goes. There are moments of modernity in many different times in the history of European history, you know, and so it was also in Chinese, you know, the difference between Confucius and Lao Tzu. The Confucius is the more conservative and more classical, you could say, and Lao Tzu is the more modern, kind of primitive-like, etc. So in European history, it's very well known, these amplitudes, and in fact, Evermond, the French, famously said on that issue that, yeah, the ancient were great and greater, and one cannot compete with them, and we are only dwarfs. But we are dwarfs sitting on the shoulders of the ancient, and therefore we could consider ourselves as great. And I think mutatis mutandis, what was true in history for this controversy between the modern and the ancient is also true for now. And the greatest of the modern are dwarfs who sit on the shoulders of the ancient. And I think that's true in any aspect of life, certainly in architecture.